All right, guys, so we got some updates here on the Democratic establishment's flailing and pathetic attempts to push back on Donald Trump. So, the latest iteration of this is Chuck Schumer, leader of the Democrats in the Senate, over on CNN with Dana Bash. And the context of what they're discussing here is Donald Trump's full-blown authoritarian crackdown on universities across the country, where, under the guise of fighting anti-Semitism, by which they really mean criticizing Israel, they have been trying to hijack university curriculum to be able to decide what kinds of professors can teach there, what kind of students can go there. Then they have, in some circumstances, been revoking green cards and student visas and arresting and deporting students for criticizing Israel. And so amidst this fascist authoritarian crackdown and takeover, Chuck Schumer is asked, what are you going to do about it? And this was his response.
It's also going to hurt the kind of medical research and other kinds of great research that is done at Harvard and other universities. So we sent him a very strong letter just the other day, asking 8 very strong questions about why this isn't just a pretext.
Well, you'll let us know if you get a response to that letter. I do want to say
we sent him a very strongly worded letter. Guys, keep in mind, this is the same party, the same establishment, the same people who, I think accurately so, have said that Donald Trump is a threat, an authoritarian threat, to the very foundations of democracy or whatever's left of it in this country. When you're facing that kind of a situation, when you're seeing what Donald Trump has done in just the few months that he's been in power, and your response is to say, we wrote him a letter? What are we doing here, guys? I mean, the notion that he's going to read that letter, he's going to dissect it, he's going to come up with a good faith response and then change his behavior. Are we just like playing games here? Are we really this delusional? Is this liberals' understanding of how you fight fascism is with strongly worded letters? Because that's what I'm getting here from Chuck Schumer. Let's be real, guys. His plan for fighting Trump's authoritarian fascist takeover of the country is to wait to the midterms. That's his whole plan, is Trump and Republicans will hang themselves. We can just sort of sit back and not really do anything. And we'll eventually win in the midterms because, they'll be so deeply unpopular that we just kind of win by default, right? Now, we'll get to some polling at the end of this video that shows that may work. It's possible that they just win by default. But again, if you're taking seriously the threat that Trump poses, is this the kind of behavior that you would be engaging in? I mean, it's just beyond pathetic. Now, this is the same Chuck Schumer who just a month ago or so said that he wouldn't block Republicans' funding bill. So this was an opportunity where Democrats in the Senate had a massive amount of leverage because Republicans were trying to pass this continuation funding mechanism to keep the government open, and they needed Democrats to support this bill, at least a certain amount of them, to get them over the 60 vote threshold, and through any sort of filibuster that may pop up. Chuck Schumer folded immediately in this situation. He didn't even ask for concessions for Democrats to support this bill. He just said, yeah, we'll support it. No questions asked. What? I mean, this is like beyond not just being an effective counter to Trump. This is like you're full-blown capitulating to his agenda. Now, amidst this, we've had several prominent Democrats who have been demanding that Chuck Schumer step down because he's clearly not the guy for this moment. People within his own party, not to mention the voter base, that are calling on him to step down. Now, he's been defiant. Even just today, I saw a different clip of him when he was asked about this saying, no, I'm going to remain as the Senate Democratic leader. And he says he's not going anywhere. Even as we have polls coming out showing that his favorability ratings are reaching 20-year lows. And it's not just him. We'll get to a poll of this guy here in a second. So Hakeem Jeffries, leader of Democrats in the House of Representatives. What has he been up to? Well, here's one of the latest headlines from Politico. They say Hakeem Jeffries makes it clear he'll stand by incumbent House Democrats. The DNC's David Hogg has said that he wants to fund some challengers in safe Democratic districts. So this is coming, and we'll read some of the details here, as David Hogg, who was a Parkland shooting survivor, right? He's a pretty standard liberal guy. He's not a radical or a leftist or anything like that. But he was recently nominated or chosen as the DNC vice chair. And one of the things that he said recently is, we're not just going to be countering Republicans, we're also going to look at some Democrats in safe Democratic seats to the point where we're not jeopardizing losing the general election to a Republican, but we're going to look at some of those districts. And if the Democrat who's in that seat is not effective, is not actually trying to fight back against Trump and against Elon, then we're going to put up some money to fund a primary challenger, right? In order to put somebody in that position that's more effectively going to do the job. Now, you saw Hakeem Jeffries there saying, no, not going to have it. We're going to support every single House Democrat, no matter how ineffectual or complicit they are. And then you also had here the DNC chair who ripped David Hogg over this proposal. So a little bit on this here. By the way, this is the same Ken Martin, chair of the DNC, who a few months back, when he was taking up this position, he was asked about billionaire funding in campaigns for the Democratic Party. And he said, we're only going to take money from the good billionaires, not the bad ones, as if there's a distinguishing factor there, right? Not the bad billionaires, just the good billionaires who I guess pay us off instead of paying off Trump. I mean, it's just absurd. Now, they say here, Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin said Thursday that party officers should be banned from taking sides in primaries. Banned from taking sides. Countering DNC Vice Chair David Hogg's plan to raise money for candidates challenging Democratic incumbents. They say Martin said that he's drafting proposed bylaw changes to require officers to remain neutral in all Democratic primaries. They say Martin said that the party neutrality is crucial to maintaining the confidence of voters, really, because you have such confidence in the voters right now, pointing to the bitter feud that emerged after supporters of Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign believed that he was stymied by party insiders putting their thumb on the scale in favor of Hillary Clinton, which is absolutely the case. That is what happened in 2016. So, like, his point here makes no sense, especially when you look at the polling in terms of how Democratic voters, how the American people broadly view Democratic leadership or view congressional Democrats in general right now. Your standing is in the garbage, okay? It's not as if you're doing things right and people are happy with the current cast that you guys have. So if anything, if you wanted the party to do better, you would be trying to primary some of the worst Democrats. Instead, he's doing the opposite. He's trying to ban the ability for party officials to even take sides in primaries. Now, if you're David Hogg at this point and you put up this plan and they just shit all over it like this, I mean, you got to leave, man. You got a platform outside of being the DNC vice chair, which who knows if that even has any legitimate power anyways. But David Hogg, I would get the fuck out of there unless you're just trying to be a standard cheerleader, I guess. But speaking of the polling data, we have here this recent CNN poll. Their headline is, frustrated Americans want more checks on Trump, have dim views of Democratic opposition. So the American people, especially Democrats, Democratic voter base, their view of the Democratic Party's opposition to Trump right now is that it's basically non-existent, right? They don't think that Democrats are doing enough to resist Trump. And that's entirely fair. We've seen some rare instances where, like in the case of the senator Van Hollen, who went down to El Salvador and directly intervened in the Abrego Garcia case. We've seen, Bernie and AOC who are going around the country directly to Republican districts and Democratic districts to try to pressure people in certain ways on their anti-oligarchy tour. We've seen some circumstances of very few select people standing up and doing something at least. But for the most part, where is the Democratic opposition? It seems like it's almost non-existent at this point. Now, the specifics in terms of the leadership here, again, from that same CNN SSRS poll. So we got Mike Johnson, who's the leader of the House Republicans, 23% favorable. 23% favorable. And he's the highest out of these. Chuck Schumer is at 17%. John Thune is at 16%. And Hakeem Jeffries is at 20%. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, combined wouldn't even hit 40% favorable ratings if you doubled what they're at right now. And they're saying stay the course. We're going to keep writing our strongly worded letters, right? Now, moving on, in terms of another prominent Democratic Party official who has been, I think, like sort of like astroturfed or artificially propped up within the Democratic establishment, Alyssa Slotkin, who was the person who Democrats picked to give the counter speech to Trump's State of the Union speech. She's this CIA ghoul, right? And she attacked Bernie Sanders, who's going out on this anti-oligarchy tour, saying that people don't know what the word oligarchy means. So we shouldn't use the word oligarchy, right? Now, let's go ahead and watch Bernie's response to this take from Alyssa Slotkin.
Let me ask you about something that your colleague, Senator Alyssa Slotkin, said. She said Democrats should stop using the term oligarchy because it's a phrase that doesn't resonate with all Americans. Are you missing a chance to speak to a wider audience, Senator?
Well, geez, we had 36,000 people out in Los Angeles, 34,000 people in Colorado. We had 30,000 people in Folsom, California, which is kind of a rural area. I think the American people are not quite as dumb as Ms. Slotkin thinks they are. I think they understand very well when the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. When big money interests are able to control both political parties, they are living in an oligarchy. And these are precisely the issues that have got to be talked about. Are you living in a democracy when Mr. Musk can spend $270 million to elect Trump and then becomes the most important person in government? Or AIPAC and other super PACs have enormous power over Democratic candidates? Those are issues that we have got to talk about. That is the reality of American society today. The very rich getting richer, working class people are struggling, 800,000 people sleeping out on the streets. If we don't address that issue, the American people will continue to turn their backs on democracy because they're looking around them and they're saying, does anybody understand what I am going through? And unfortunately, right now, to a large degree, neither party does.
Is that so hard? Like, is it difficult for Democrats to figure out that that's a pretty easy message to run with, and an effective message and a popular message, right? This is the kind of left-wing populism that Democrats have had the chance, since 2016, you could argue, to run on. And they have refused, not only refused to do it, but have actively sabotaged this wing of their coalition over and over and over again. And let's be real, as Bernie is pointing out there, it's not just Republicans, or Trump taking money from Elon Musk that are in the pocket of corporations and billionaires and wealthy elite interests. It's Democrats, right? It's both political parties. This is how our political system works, on a system of legalized corruption and bribery. So of course you're not going to have Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffries or any of these top Democratic establishment figures whose entire political career relies on taking that money. Of course, they're not going to turn around and speak like Bernie Sanders does, right? Or advocate for the policies that Bernie Sanders does, right? It's not a mystery. Now, specifically on Slotkin, it's amazing for a couple different reasons that she says, oh, this isn't going to resonate with people. Because number one, as Bernie was saying there, he's been doing an anti-oligarchy tour around the country where they have been pulling historic crowds, like crowds that are bigger than any that he was able to pull in either his 2016 or 2020 campaigns, right? In an off year where there is no major election that's happening, and they're pulling tens of thousands of people out to these rallies. And she has the audacity to say, oh, it isn't resonating with people. And what the fuck are you doing, Slotkin? What exactly are you doing to resonate with the American people? I mean, it's just a joke. The second reason it's ridiculous, Slotkin herself has previously used the term oligarchy when criticizing Russia. So you can call Vladimir Putin's Russia an oligarchy, right? Which is fair to say. But then when it comes to the United States, oh, suddenly, oh, we can't use that phrase. Oh, don't say that over here. It's almost as if she's kind of working on behalf of the oligarchical system that we have. Now, we also have another update here, right? On top of the Bernie, on top of the Hakeem Jeffries, the Chuck Schumer, the David Hogg, this story, which is absolutely insane. I believe we covered it at the time when this happened back a couple months ago. But this guy, Gerry Connolly, who I believe, let's see how old he is, like 74 years old, right? This guy beat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or I shouldn't really say beat. He was chosen by the Democratic Party establishment over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the head of the Oversight committee, or the top Democrat on this committee. Now, this committee is arguably the most important when you're in the minority in terms of resisting what the majority party is doing. You want in this position somebody who's energetic, somebody who knows the right narrative to use, somebody who is capable of pushing back on Trump administration officials, somebody who's going in that kind of a lane. You want an attack dog in this position. And instead of AOC, they chose a 74-year-old Gerry Connolly who has cancer. And he had cancer at the time that this was happening. Now, fast forward to today, just a few months later, and now this guy Connolly is having to step down from this position because his cancer has gotten worse. Now, I'm not going to attack him on the cancer side of it because obviously you feel bad for anybody who has cancer, but it's not like we didn't know that before. What basically just happened is you just wasted the first 100 days of Donald Trump's administration, where they have wreaked havoc on the country in numerous different ways. Some ways that you could argue require a little bit of oversight and pushback, right? You just wasted the first 100 days just to end up resigning from your position because you felt like, oh, I'm the ranking member, I put my years in, I deserve this just by default. Not because I'm going to be better for the position or better at the job or better at resisting what Trump is doing, but because it's my turn. So he beats AOC for this position a couple months later, and he's out. I mean, it's a perfect encapsulation of both the gerontocracy that we're living under right now, where we've had multiple Democrats who have died so far in this congressional session, bringing down their numbers in the House. And you got like 74-year-olds with cancer being picked for top positions. What are we doing? Now, the person who Connelly is reportedly wanting to replace him, at least until there's a new election for this position, is 70-year-old. Again, what do we do? Can we not pick anybody under the age of at least 50? Is that not possible? Do they not exist? 70-year-old Representative Stephen Lynch to take up his oversight responsibilities until the next election. Lynch's background, here we go, guys. He was arrested for drunkenly attacking a group of Iranian students protesting U.S. intervention abroad. This is who we're getting on the oversight committee, at least until there's a new election. I mean, come on, guys. Now, finishing off, in terms of the polling here, from Harry Anton over on CNN, saying, quote, if the House GOP is under any illusions that Trump's fall in the polls won't bring them down, they're living on fantasy island. Three recent generic House polls show Dems up by 4 points on average, which is a big shift from 2024. They say the polls look like April of 05 and 2017, prior to big Dem midterm gains. So on the one hand, on the one side of this, right, I'm looking at this situation and I'm like, it's not difficult to figure out how to resist Trump. Bernie and AOC are doing it to at least some extent, but there's a myriad of different ways that you can do it within the government, outside of the government, trying to organize people, trying to rally people, trying to, push for a general strike or something of the sort. Many different ways that you could do it, but it's not difficult, at least in terms of the narrative, to figure out what you guys should be talking about right now. Trump is digging his own hole, right? What have we seen in his first 100 days? Well, we have him potentially going to get us into a war with Iran on Israel's behalf. We have him threatening to take over the Gaza Strip and continuing to fund and arm and support and give cover for that genocide. We have him threatening to take over even allied countries like Panama and Greenland and Canada. We have him domestically here rounding up people by the thousands, in some cases even rounding up U.S. citizens through ICE and sending them to a torture camp gulag down in El Salvador with absolutely no due process whatsoever, throwing people into this torture dungeon for having autism awareness tattoos, right? We have him doing all of these different things, waging economic war on the world, potentially plunging us into a recession. The ways that you can attack Trump are endless. It's not difficult to come at this from a left-wing economic populist perspective and to make a convincing case to the American people, to rally the American people, to organize people, to get people mobilized. That's not difficult. But the Democratic leadership is asleep at the wheel. Beyond just asleep at the wheel, they're like in the passenger seat with Donald Trump. That's what they're doing. They're beyond useless. Writing letters as if that's some form of resistance. I mean, it's beyond pathetic. Now, again, on the other hand, you see polling data like this and it's like, I mean, just by default, Chuck Schumer may end up being right in the sense that even if they don't do anything, as the country's being shredded to a million pieces, you got an unelected billionaire ripping up the federal government and all this, shredding social programs for working class people. You know, even if you do nothing to resist any of this, you still might win in the midterms by default because of how atrocious they are. The problem with that is that, again, even if you win, we're just going to be back to square one, right? We're not solving any issues. We're not making progress on any of these things. If anything, that will just slow down our inevitable descent into fascism. And that's the problem with Democrats. It's the classic ratchet effect, where it's like, okay, our job is to resist Trump, even though our resistance is pathetic, but our job is to block what Republicans are doing. So every time you get a Republican president, especially when it's somebody like Trump, they move the needle. They twist that wrench further and further to the right. And then Dems just act as a backstop. We're not moving further to the left. We're just sort of stopping in place. And then the next Republican comes along, twist it further to the right. This is the pattern over and over and over again that we are seeing from Democrats. And that's exactly what's going to happen, even if they win the midterms, even if they win in 2028, depending on who they end up picking for their candidate. So I'll leave you guys off with that. I wish there was some way that, voters were able to directly remove Democratic leadership because they got to fucking go.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying